listening to the Balancing Act podcast. Here's your hosts, Jamie Wonko and Joe Vitale.
Okay, well, the excitement is palpable. Is that what it is? I don't know. But hey, we're recording. Didn't know if you knew. Here we are. What's up, buddy? How are you?
How are you? It is a wonderful day to be listening and participating in the Balancing Act podcast. Welcome, 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 one and all. I am Jamie Wonko here with Joe Vitale, and we are so excited. This has been a long-awaited guest of ours. We had interviewed her once before, and we did not get enough time with her.
No, we did not.
We just didn't. And I've thought about her all year long. So I'm so thrilled to welcome our guest today.
Hey, Dr. Noelle Santorelli, what's going on?
Hi again.
I also have to tell you, there are so many of our, in a small circle as we got this started, that once we had you on, they're like, when are you having her on again? Could she be on again? Like you were so, and we immediately, as soon as we were done, we're like, we have to have her on again. Like we have to find a way, we have to do this. And we're so gracious and thankful that you were willing to join us again, because like so many people are resonating with what you're talking about. See, I don't even know where to go with this conversation. This conversation is like, and Jamie's not a trier, so she will not relate to this analogy. This is like when I go to the ice cream shop and there are so many choices that I get to choose and I don't know what to do because I have so many questions I want to ask.
Yep.
And I don't know where to start. So, that's my analogy. Because Jamie always gets the same thing, but I know she has a lot of questions too. We're just
there's
super.
So many paths we can go down with this topic, and this topic is so big, and it's resonating with so many people that there are just so many avenues we can go down. Right? We've got the grown-up path, we've got the child path, we've got the school path, we've got the sports path. I mean, we've got the female versus male path. Complicated topic.
Yeah, and we're all kind of in that space too. And we're also in the midst of, what did you call it? Maycember last time, Jamie? Is that what we talked about?
Maycember.
Yeah. And even in your post, if you follow Dr. Santorelli on Instagram, she posted today like, hey, here's all the things that I'm doing. And I'm like, yep, that's kind of how our schedules are. It's pickups and drop-offs and this and that. So like, I know when my stress level goes up that I struggle with things a little bit more, because it's hard for me sometimes to regulate. So I'm just, I want to be a sponge and soak it all in. So I'm just excited to have you, and I'll stop babbling now. Yeah.
No, you won't.
No, I won't.
We said the last time, like we have 3 people whose last names end in a vowel.
Yeah.
We could talk forever.
Yeah, we are so Italian. We are just, yes. All we need is
hands flying.
Yep.
Conversation going.
Yep.
So can you, for our new listeners, can you give us a little bit of your background? Where did you start? What it is that you do?
Yep. So I'm a clinical psychologist. So I have my doctorate in clinical psychology, which there's so many, therapy has become very mainstream now, I think, with social media, which I think is great on one hand. I think on the other hand, it kind of confuses a little bit who does what and what exactly is what, right? So we've got therapists, we've got licensed marriage and family therapists, we've got licensed professional counselors, we've got social workers, we've got coaches. We've got psychiatrists who prescribe medication, and then we've got psychologists who don't prescribe medication, but we have our doctorate degree in psychology. There's also lots of different realms of psychology. Mine is clinical, meaning I've worked historically with psychopathology. So not developmental psychology, which is like the psychology of how we develop, but I work primarily with psychopathology. So that's mental health diagnoses. And even more specifically, I took a big interest in family systems work, which is pathology among the family and how different systems within a family work together.
Oh,
so that's a lot. And so my training is clinical psychology, family systems, and personality disorders. And I work in private practice for the past 13 years, and I'm adjunct faculty for Emory School of Medicine, Department of Psychiatry. But in my private practice, because of my interest in systems and personality pathology, I started to notice out in the wild some personality characteristics among different systems that were concerning to me.
Can you give us an example of what you mean by like a family system?
So family systems just, it could just be mom, dad, kids. It could be two moms, two dads, kids. It could be um the immediate family, so mom, dad, kids, and then the extended family, and then how that interplays or intersects with your current family.
Hmm.
Sometimes we call that the family of origin, the family where you come from, and how that impacts your current family system.
Okay.
But it gets very complicated because you're not dealing with one person or one personality.
Mm.
You're dealing with an entire system that sometimes can have upwards of 20 people because you're also then looking at the husband's family or the wife's family, right? And so there's a lot of people, and these situations get really messy and complicated. And so that would be, when you do family therapy. Lots of times you're looking at family systems, or I work with one person one on one, but I'm looking at how they, sort of how the system impacts their functioning. Because with family systems, no one works or lives like on their own, right? There's always something impacting you. And so we sort of take a wider lens approach than just the individual
Right.
client that's in our office.
Okay. Yeah. Joe and I often talk about some of the issues that we've had in the past, specific like to our parents and being part of the sandwich generation, and something that we sort of come like when you when you're like at the end of the hallway and you're just like ramming your head into the wall, is that sort of inability to move the other people. It's like, I'm on board and my spouse is on board, but like my spouse's parents are like a no, or like my parents are and then how that affects us as a spouse, and then also how it affects you as a parent, and then trickles down to your kids. So in that general
Yep. That's exactly it.
space. Okay. Okay. Do you ever have anybody who brings in so I know you said you do one-on-one but also family. Have you ever had anybody who actually brings in like the husband, the wife, and then like their
Oh,
parents?
sure.
Oh, wow.
Absolutely.
Oh,
Yep. Extended family sessions. Yep.
wow. It would be hard for me to even imagine my parents like of like just their eight. My parents are almost 80. Joe's parents are similar, a couple years, a little older, not much though. So the boomers, if you will, like it's really like it's crazy to imagine them accepting any form of therapy.
I've had I've had uh, you know, grandparents bring in their adult children,
Oh,
right? And then the adult children bring in their children, so the grandchildren, right? And we will do a family systems session,
hmm.
or it's family therapy. And so it can get a lot more dynamic and complicated.
Sure.
I also sweat a lot more. They're very intense, right? But it makes me highly attuned to different systems that operate outside of family systems, right? We've got work systems, we've
Mm,
got educational systems, we've got systems everywhere. And so that's when I started to realize, in conjunction with my personality pathology work, oh my gosh, there's a system going on right now that is really, really not healthy. And that was in one of my kids' schools where I first noticed it. And that's where the sort of quote unquote mean girl mom dynamic came up that I started talking about, because I started noticing this was a huge systemic problem that the systems involved were the school, the parents, and the kids.
And how did they interact with one another in that system? Like, you're saying it's something that you witnessed, so, like, was each group playing its own role, for the most part?
I think so, but I think each group had its own role, but each group affected the other system very intensely,
Yeah.
right? So, um, but noticing that, this sort of middle school ish behavior that historically we have very much looked at it as okay, this is just middle school behavior. Um, we were now having schools, teachers, administrators, parents. There was a lot more involvement going on than your classic middle school or high school turbulent teen behaviors or friend group dynamics. I was starting to realize it was a lot more complex than that.
And what exactly I'm sure there's not one thing, but is there, a few things that you think, are the reasons behind that?
I think, yeah, it's multifaceted. I think that one of the primary things is, of course, our access to technology and communication. So, what used to happen at school and would be between just kids at school now carries over to home life. So, if you're involved in, and let me just explain, relational aggression is what this is all
Yeah, I
based.
was just gonna say, I know that that was what, so if we could define that term because it's so important to our
Yep.
talk with you.
So the cornerstone of all of this is something called relational aggression, which is a psychological term for social bullying or covert bullying. So that is sort of bullying by, in a more subtle way, using things like manipulation, gossip, backstabbing, gatekeeping, really sort of power plays to control your status in the group and control other people's statuses in groups and relationships. And so everyone, it's a tale as old as time that middle school is hard. And when people say middle school's hard, what they mostly mean, yeah, academics is hard, but what they mostly mean is the social landscape gets
It
hard,
it's the worst.
right? It's the worst. Like,
It's just the worst. Like,
middle
and we
school's hard. We all know what they mean.
Yeah, and we've talked about this often too, and I'm by no means a brain expert or anything like that, but like these kids' brains are still developing. They're going through puberty. Some of them are dealing with extreme ADHD. Their hormone levels are off. They're figuring out if they like boys or girls or both. There's just a lot of, and there's also a lot of societal pressures that come with that about kids, finding their place, and that's very hard to do, especially at 12 and 13 years old. Um,
Absolutely.
there is light at the end of the tunnel,
Yep.
right? Because we have, our kids are 16, very soon to be mine, are very soon to be 17.
Yep.
And it's definitely something that we see and witness on a daily basis, right?
Yep.
There's kids that are either starving for attention or they're excluding the one kid who's not on the specific travel team that the other kids are on, or the one that's in the club that shouldn't have been, or the one that made honor society who should have made honor society but didn't. Like there's so many multifaceted levels to it that the kids they can't really see past it until they get to high school and things start to thin out a little bit, is what I like to say, right?
Yeah.
Um, at the same time, I've witnessed my own children have their own struggles with, within their peer and friend groups that have caused, some tension amongst them. It's mainly with my daughter. Not it's not, regarding relationships or like, dating or anything like that, but it's more about like decisions that people make and why people are hanging out with this group and not that group. And it
Oh,
just becomes like a big like power struggle, tug of war.
yeah.
And sometimes it's in 3, 4 different directions, and it's hard to land on your feet.
And
So,
relational, I'll point this out, is it does not mean romantic necessarily, right? The relational aggression means any aggression within relationships or where relationships are targeted. So it can be exactly what you said. Like, we don't like that Susie's talking to Mary's group at lunch. So let's all not talk to Susie.
the more
Doesn't have to do
yeah,
anything with boys. It can, but it doesn't
yeah.
have to do with.
And the more we talk about this and I listen and I see the things that you post, I'm constantly thinking about like, okay, is this because that we are the let's do all the things generation of parents. Like, are we causing this? Is basically what I'm getting to. Like, we're trying to do all the things. We're trying to get the kids involved in all the different activities, and everybody's got to have their own niche of something that they do, whether it be theater or music or sports or academics or whatever it is. Like, everybody's looking for that edge that they have on the other kids. And are we creating that for our children?
I mean, I hate to say this, but I think we are certainly not helping, and we are most likely largely contributing. I think the pendulum really swung, right? We had our boomer parents where, therapy, who needs therapy? Or, you're sad. I don't know.
Yeah.
Go listen to some, who
Yeah.
knows? Go in your
Go rub some emotional dirt on it and get over it,
Get over it. Get
over
over it.
Yeah.
Get over it, right? Yeah. So I think a lot of us were raised with that kind of mentality. And then I think the pendulum really swung, right? It swung to more, supportive parenting, more engaged parenting. I worry that we're getting to a place now of enmeshed parenting, even more so than engaged parenting.
Can you explain what that is, please?
So, enmeshed parenting from, and this isn't in a textbook anywhere, but when you have an enmeshed relationship, it's where you don't know where you begin and the other person starts. You are overly connected emotionally to the other person. So, like, I don't know what's best for me unless I know it's good for you. Or
Ah.
what's good for me has to be good for you. It's hard to tease out how you're separate from me.
Are we talking about more of like a friend relationship between the parent and child and not a parent-child relationship?
It doesn't have to be, it can be. Sometimes it can cross over into that. But sometimes it can be, I really value academics, and therefore you must value academics above everything else.
Got it. Okay.
So it can be like, let's be buddies and hang out, and I'm so interested in you liking me that I'm just going to be more of a friend. It can look like that, but it can also look like your interests, activities, desires, goals are going to match mine.
Hmm.
And I think when we start to get too enmeshed with our children, that line starts to blur between um, you become overly invested in even the small things, like what team does your kid play on?
Yeah.
What school are you at? What did you get on your SATs? It starts to sort of breed this level of competition, I think, between the parents that then trickles down to the kids. So I think we kind of swung that pendulum from boomers that are like, go figure it out. Then we had our generation that's like, no, that wasn't cool. Like, I want to be there for my kid. I want to be supportive. I want to hear all the things. But I think for some parents, that's crossed over into being overly enmeshed, where you're not giving them independence, where you're not giving them freedom, and where you're micromanaging things, even as far down to their social standing in relationships.
Yeah.
Like, it's crossed into that level for some families. I also think and talk a lot about sort of this feeling of scarcity that I think a lot of parents, I have to say nowadays, because I wasn't a parent back in the days, but there's this scarcity mentality that there's only so many spots, there's only so many, admissions into certain colleges, there's only so much to go around, and I need to make sure my kid gets one of those spots.
Yeah.
So
I
it's driven by scarcity too.
I think you're kind of hitting the nail on the head, and I'll own up to it. I think a lot of times, like, I don't want to say I live or die by my kids, but I really can feel like when they're feeling pain or when they're upset or when they're having, a difficult time, like, part of me, and this is like, the way my dad was, it's like, I just want to fix it. Right. And sometimes you can't fix it. Time fixes it. And or just another situation fixes it. And like, I really don't like when my children are experiencing difficulties. I'm not going to fix it for them, but I know I empathetically feel bad for them,
Oh,
you know?
absolutely.
Mm,
And I get where and so this relational aggression that I talk about with which is pretty developmentally appropriate for middle schoolers, even high schoolers. We don't really expect to see it in adults, but we do see it in adults, and I particularly see it in parent groups, which is surprising to a lot of people because, again, we don't expect to deal with bullying or gossip or manipulation or triangulation um, when we're in our adult selves. But I think it's not driven by these parents being bad people. I think it's actually kind of the opposite. They're
mm,
so invested in everything feels so dramatic and so important. And like everything depends on this child's happiness, success, status, that I think we all go a little bit crazy over some things that might not be that big of a deal. And so I think it drives lots of competition, and lots of competition drives a lot of relational aggression.
mm.
Well, sure. I mean, it's a like a flex, if you will, to be able to say
Absolutely.
like my child's varsity this, or my kid is in the top 10%, or whatever that might be. And there's a lot of like value that's placed on that for many people in the parenting space for sure. So, I
Absolutely.
hate to say like especially with sports, but you
Yeah,
know
especially with sports.
a lot, a lot, a
You know, I
lot.
I've I've
And
been through
I don't really sports much, and, like, my kids don't sports much, although as you're talking, I'm like, "Oh gosh, like, I don't sports and my kids don't sports, like, is that hereditary or is that me, like, making a mistake? Am I now have enmeshed my"
Yeah, and I
Right.
do and I have experienced some things this year, with my kids and with sports, and my kids are and they will tell you this, they're average athletes.
Mhm.
They're slightly above average athletes. They are
Mhm.
not like, "I'm gonna play in college, people are looking at me" kinda athletes. They play the sports for fun, they like to be part of a team, they like the girls and boys that they're out there with, and, I came to this realization this year, with my son, like, is he happy?
Yes.
And he is. And wherever he plays, I'm fine with, because I also know, and he also knows, that he plays baseball, there are players that are better than him.
Right.
And it also pains me to hear that there are children of other parents that might be a little bit younger, or, or they're the kid, the basketball coach's kid or this person's kid. It's like, "Oh, well, they're out there because of this and who they know." And then I'm looking on the field and I'm like, these kids are good. Like, they deserve to be out there. So you can't like, a lot of us, we start to, like, bash and say, "Oh, it's because they're this person's son or that person's son," or well, no, actually, that's not it. And I try to take a lot of solace in the fact that when a baseball coach has a parent meeting, it says, "It is my decision to put the 9 best players out there on the field. And if my son's not out on the field, he's not one of the 9 best players." And
Right.
I'm okay with that. That's it. Like, I'm okay with that because that's the coach the decision makes. That's the coach's decision. So,
I wouldn't think that the person that's the coach, like, to me, that makes complete and total sense. Like,
a
but, like,
100%.
you're the coach, you are teaching people how to play this game. Why wouldn't your child be like, they had you one-on-one at home for weeks, months, years, teaching them how to do it. I would imagine that, like, you were constantly, like, throwing and catching and jumping and running, right? So, you have the
Yeah,
most practice that of anyone. Why wouldn't you be better than everybody else?
true.
Right? Instead,
And
that's how
yeah,
my
no,
mind works, like,
I
not, "Oh, you got that because 'cause you're the coach's kid," but, like, wow, you had a one-on-one coach your whole life.
Right.
yeah, and a lot of these kids are gifted athletes. Like,
Mhm.
you can't coach 6'3". You know what I mean? Like, if you're 6'3", good on you. My son is not 6'3". He's not gonna be 6'3". So, there's a whole different avenue of sports that opens up when you're that tall.
Absolutely.
And these kids they're putting 7 days a week in, and they're
Yeah.
they're going here and they're going there. And my son is not doing that, not because he doesn't want to, but because he's working. He's got school. Baseball is part of his life. It is not his life.
And it
So
becomes the parent's life too. And I don't
yes,
mean to bash on any particular sport, although mine plays baseball. Um, I've seen this across the board in all kinds of
yeah,
sports.
oh yeah, 100%.
And not to bash just on sports, I think sports are sort of the most popular or sort of in the biggest number. We have people playing sports or cheer or dance, right? But I've had moms reach out talking about, messy theater dynamics,
Oh, yeah.
Oh
right?
yeah,
Mhm.
So I hear it too. I think that's less prominent than our sports culture, but
Mhm.
I think it's everywhere.
Yeah.
yeah.
2 of
Even
my girls are, like, heavily involved in theater, and I have to say that we've been at, like, the same school, since they're in 7th grade now, since they were in 3rd into 4th grade, and we've been there for this long because she's got, like, such a zero tolerance policy for any of that, and it is probably, like, the healthiest environment that they go to, and they are, like, running out of the car to get to me, I always say, like, "If I have to ask you more than once, we're not going."
yeah.
So and, like, that's that, but they are just always like, "Come on and let's go," and we're running, and that really is a testament to, like, those are, like, the diamond places, like, you have to find the people that align with your
Yeah.
value system
Well,
too.
and then you have these I'm not trying to knock the sport, so, YouTube, don't come at me. In regards to, like, the cheerleading groups and the different teams that people are on and what competition they're going to and whether, if you're on a travel team that is only traveling in New Jersey or are you going to Arizona and Atlanta and it's like, for
It's
what?
layer upon layer upon layer. And
Yeah,
I do think that sports inherently drives a different type of competition than like the arts or theater. And I do think that the people in arts or theater, and again, this is a broad stereotype. This is not coming from a textbook. This is my own personal thought. Um, I think those are some people that are a little bit more in touch with their emotions and how, theater in particular,
yep.
right? Like how do I perceive emotions? I'm reading human behavior. I'm studying human behavior if I'm an actress, right? I
Mhm.
think the sports world, it is a little bit more about numbers and performance versus feelings and emotionality and depth of relationships. It's about are we winning or losing? And I think with the arts a lot, it doesn't boil down to that.
So, and I don't wanna necessarily change the subject or go in a different direction, but,
Mhm.
a couple of talking points that we had,
Yeah, yeah.
and so
Wait, before you do shift, I
yeah,
just
yeah, no, of course. Go ahead.
why is it or what are some of what could be a reason for why so much of like what is a good parent, that's been like a conversation we've been having lately of like why is this idea of like our generation, and I really don't blame people because I feel Joe and I we've fallen into this.
Oh, me
Why
too.
is it that it's a like you're only a good parent if you have them this and every like the list of things goes on and on. Is there any possibility of ever like breaking out of this? Because I can't imagine it getting more intense.
Can you imagine?
No.
I do think, and again, not to blame technology for everything, but we have so much more access to so many more opinions, Like, I think when my mom or when I was growing up, I think there was like Dr. Spock, and that was the book, right? And it got you through like, I don't know, maybe 10 years old, maybe 5 years old. I don't know. But she didn't have, copious amounts of information. And I think we are so overwhelmed. We're an information overload.
Yeah.
I can go on Instagram, TikTok, Google, ChatGPT, and get 900 different opinions and ideas. And I think we've sort of lost focus of how do I look inside? How do I look internally and know how to parent? I don't. I mean, I do. I hope I do. But people are kind of looking for external sources of validation for how to parent and do something that really probably comes naturally. And I think it's great to have more information than maybe our parents did, but I think we're pushing it a little far
Yeah. That
with
makes
the amount of information. And so then you're constantly measuring yourself up against all these different markers.
Yeah.
That also recently happened amongst, our kids' group of friends. I mean, just to make mention of something small,
Yeah.
it was like after the junior prom, they're like, "Oh, what are we gonna do?" And they're like, "Oh, we're gonna go here. We're gonna do this. We're gonna go to Great Adventure." And my kids are like, I don't wanna do that." And it's like, "Well, but that's what we're doing because everybody does something after the junior prom, so we have to do it." And they were like, no. No, I'm not. I'm not a roller coaster person. It makes me sick. My son was shopping for a car. We were going to look for a car. I didn't know this was happening. That was happening, that they were gonna go out afterwards. Like, but they kinda stood their ground and were like, "Well, no, I don't have to do something just because everybody else is doing something." It's it's the old thing that, if all your friends jumped off a bridge, would you?" It's like one of those types of things, right? Like, I'm kinda proud of them for being like, "No." Like,
Absolutely.
that no, we're not doing this because, like, it's not a conversation. It was somebody else, like, dictating, "Hey, here's what you should do." Um,
I think though, like even as a mom, I remember like with my first, like with the milestones, there was like so much pressure with like how many words are they saying when
oh
she turns
god,
20?
yeah,
And are they crawling? And they should. And how are they crawling? And is it
Yep.
hand? And are they, pulling themselves up? And it was always just this, and then you would have like my mom who would say like, they're not gonna get married wearing a diaper,
Right.
or like,
yeah,
"Oh, they're not
Mhm.
gonna go to college with the pacifier in their mouth," and so, like, some of that, like, chill, it was like, you look around at your own friends and other
yeah,
moms and dads, and, like, it was like, "Oh my gosh, I don't know, I think that they probably should," and so it was like you're always absorbing all of that, like,
yeah.
there's no one to look at to be, like, the touchstone of, like,
Right.
"It's gonna be fine."
That's it's almost kinda where it started. Like, if I go back and because we had twins first, right? And then you guys had your girls.
Yeah.
Like, we were constantly comparing, well, this one, Sophia says 24 words, but Joey's only saying 17. Well, that's also because Sophia was a chatterbox, and Joey was probably just like, "Oh my god, I want silence." And he probably just didn't talk because he was busy playing with blocks and didn't wanna have a conversation, because my daughter was taking up all the room and all the space with her words.
Yep.
So, like, we were constantly comparing them to each other in a room when they're just two different organisms, living in a particular space. But a lot of what Jamie's saying there is like, they're not going to graduate with a diaper. Like those types of things are like we need to remember that. But we're always comparing, which kid was reading first, which kid was, saying their alphabet, and
And now we're comparing to millions of people on
yeah,
platforms, right? Like, it's hard enough when you're comparing
yeah.
to your own children or
Who's got
siblings.
who's got the most elaborate promposal, and who's got the bed party for college, right? The stuff on the bed. Is
It
that a
it
thing?
ne
That's a thing,
Yeah, I
right?
think it's a thing. It
Is
never
that
or
what
It's yeah, it's a bed
coordinating.
party.
it's called a
Yeah.
bed party? I hope I wasn't, like, calling it the wrong
No, it's a
thing.
bed party, and it's
And
when
it's some
the
kinda naughty thing that everyone's gonna go look up
no.
and be like, "Oh,
It's
that's not good."
when you're a senior and you announce which college you've, decided to go to, not necessarily what you've been accepted to, but which college you've decided that you're committed to, and there are balloons, and everything on your bed is, like, all the merch from the school, and then there's, like you shop for, like, every food snack, so if your school
Noelle
colors are red and black, you would find, like, every
Noelle just
different
rolled
type
her
of
eyes. I do wanna
yeah.
point that out because Noelle was like, "Oh god." That was great.
Yeah. Every snack. So if your school's blue, you can only have blue Doritos or like,
And
Powerade blue.
this is the competition, right?
That's
This
what I'm
is
saying.
Yeah.
going back to competition. This is
For
tough
us
to compete with.
it was like
Yeah.
when you put the sticker on the back of your window
Mhm.
when you said you were gonna go to this school,
Yep.
that's when you were announcing it. Like, that was the deal. When you had
And
your
I
sticker on the
got
back of the window.
because I went to a school, I commuted to college and it was very close to where I lived in high school. It was like 10 miles, not even. And all I heard was, why don't you just like oh, is that the 13th grade? Like, why even bother going to college? So I would have never done a bed party. I didn't even want anybody to know where I was going to school. I
Right.
was frankly like embarrassed about it. And now like even like the whole like the declaration day or decision day, I think it's like May 1st or something, and everyone's got a shirt and everyone like and they do this with their hands and boys, girl, it doesn't matter, and they all have the shirt, and, like, it's a constant I mean, the hours that I've TikToked,
Right.
watching kids, I don't know, yes.
Yeah, so I know about the sports competition. This is all new. I did know about sort of, you don't even get a roommate in this. Even getting a college dorm mate or roommate is pressure.
So much
You've
pressure.
got to find the person before. I remember I filled out a questionnaire and it was like, do you smoke? Do you like to stay up late? Right. And then they matched you with someone. Now I've heard from my clients, my young adult or teenage clients, they feel like they're behind the eight ball if they don't have their college roommate picked out
Yes.
before school's even over
Yes.
because they've got to get on the coordinating of the interior design for the dorm room.
Yes. And I have, a niece and a nephew. One is, just finished her second year of college, and the other, he's just graduating. And so this is so interesting to me because it was like you have to meet and then you talk beforehand, and then they have all of these groups, these social groups online for the colleges that they're going to before they've even gone. And in order to, have these groups, but what's crazier is that like, okay, so you're 17 and you're now meeting other kids that are going to go to your school. They have them for adults, for the parents. And my sister was like, "What? Huh?" Like, just when you start to think like, "Oh, I have a break, ha ha ha." No, because now you're on groups where they're yeah, it's a lot. It's a
This is how I
lot.
meant about that this would be sort of, to me, a version of enmeshment, right? Where does
Mhm.
the child's life begin and yours separates?
Yeah.
And and the other question is, who thought this was a good idea? That's what I'd love to know. Like for parents to be in a chat group or like who like
But also,
why?
like, if I don't think it's a good idea, please don't be mean to me about it
Yes. Yeah.
because it's great for you,
Mhm.
but it's just not, it's like
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
yeah, because, and I'm sorry, but I do think like some of this stems back to one of the things that's like my biggest pet peeve, which is like when your child comes out of elementary school and they throw the backpack at you and and people accept the backpack and carry it for them. And there's something about
Uh-huh.
that I never can understand. And also, it's like, so to me, it's like, at what age do you not carry the bag, right? So it's
Right.
like, I feel like sometimes, and that is, I'm very judgmental about that. Like, why? No, ma'am. Why are you carrying their backpack? And most of the time, it's like they're just throwing it. And so I feel like it's this idea of like, I would never do that. But like, you're not that good of a mom because you should carry it for them. And just the same as like, you shouldn't tell them no and you shouldn't be punishing them and oh they didn't mean it and it's like this whole constant that's the talk that happens all the
Well,
time.
and I think we're trying to protect our kids from feeling any form of distress, right? And
Mm,
and at the end of the day, again, I like to come back to this idea that grown up mean girls or mean girl moms or dads, I like to think or hope that they are really operating from a place of really truly wanting to protect their child.
yeah.
That's an explanation, not an excuse. But I think it comes from this sort of biological, evolutionary place where we've sort of, that's always been there, especially for women, right? The mama bear, or the way women evolutionarily speaking, right? We were the homemakers, we were caring for the children while our spouses or partners went out hunting and gathering food, right?
Yeah.
And so our relationships were really critical to us having the resources and the help that we needed at home, at home base, right? And it was too dangerous to get physically aggressive because we had to care for our children. And so we used those close relationships as a means of getting what we needed when there was something off in the group. So this is very, very based in evolution. Um, And I think now with resources feeling more scarce to people, I think because we're highlighting what everybody else has or doesn't have, right? Or we're curating what everyone has, we are feeling like there's less to go around. And so I think it's exacerbating this feeling of I need to protect my kin. I need to protect my own, and I'll do whatever it takes to do that.
And is that where that idea of scarcity was coming into play again, like you were talking about, like we're fighting for the limited resources, right? Whether
That's
it's
what I think it feels like psychologically to people. Whether it's true or not, I think it feels that way, right? There's only X number of D1 scholarships. And I don't want my kid to miss out. And I don't know what to do if my kid's upset or distressed or disappointed. So I'm just going to make sure he's not disappointed. And I think it's very sort of, it's like a visceral response for some people.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, we're going to continue our conversation with Dr. Santorelli in a part 2 that's going to be coming up very shortly. So we, appreciate Dr. Santorelli. I appreciate you. And Jamie, we appreciate you too.
We appreciate everybody.
Yeah. So we're going to continue this conversation and bring Dr. Santorelli back for a part 2 for us to continue to talk about relational aggression, what it looks like in schools and among different systems, you said?
Systems.
So yeah, we're going to see everybody on our next episode with Dr. Santorelli on the Balancing Act podcast. Thanks for joining us today.
Bye. Thank you.
Look for the Balancing Act podcast every week on your favorite podcast platform. New episodes drop every Tuesday. Thank you for being a part of our audience. We appreciate you.